What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett. By the way, yesterday, I realized after the fact, due to a lot of your guys' comments, that it looked like my head was detached from my body because I was wearing a green shirt with a green screen. That usually doesn't mesh very well. So I fixed that. Hopefully, you guys got a good laugh yesterday. But like I said, I'm going to jump into Jason Garrett. And listen, I've tried to be as fair as I possibly can with Jason Garrett. I didn't want to make Jason Garrett out to be a punching bag for the New York Giants and put all the blame of this franchise on him. I do think there's a lot of other individuals that deserve a lot of the responsibility for how poorly the New York Giants have played since Jason Garrett has become a member of the New York Giants. And just like Daniel Jones last year, where a lot of people had excuses in terms of his playmakers and his offensive line, I thought the same was fair to say about Jason Garrett. But the fact of the matter is the New York Giants are 3 games into the season. They're coming off a loss to arguably the worst team in the football outside of themselves, the way they've played so far, against the Atlanta Falcons, home with 3 extra days to prepare. And the fan base is demanding changes. And right now, I can't blame the fan base, especially with the way that the offense performed last week against the league's worst defense in the NFL. You're talking about a defense that surrendered 32 points to the Eagles. You're talking about a defense that surrendered 48 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, albeit I think, again, there were 2 defensive touchdowns, but regardless, over 30 points defensively against 2 straight opponents. The New York Giants were unable to create more than 14 points. Yes, they moved the ball 20-20, but there were no big plays. I think Daniel Jones only attempted 2 throws of over 20 yards. One was a completion to C.J. Board. The other was an incompletion where they threw it on 3rd and 3, and inexplicably, after that, Daniel Jones may or may not have checked out of that play, decided to punt it on the 39. If you knew you were going to punt on 4th and 3, you probably would have wanted to throw a much higher percentage pass. And the New York Giants, and that's more on Joe Judge, by the way, than Garrett not going for it on that 4th and 3, but the play calling was not good. Daniel Jones was coming off a week in which the read option looked like it was terrific. He ran for over 140 yards. Had it not been for that C.J. Board penalty, I don't think they used the read option once throughout that entire game. We all know that Daniel Jones' strength is the deep ball. So at this point, even though there's a lot of factors outside of just Jason Garrett for why this offense is not performing, you look at the offensive line when we got into the red zone. The offensive line was abysmal on one of those drives where they blew up the screen pass. They were in the backfield within a second when they went right around Bredesen and Billy Price. And then the very next play, they sacked Daniel Jones within a second for like a 10-yard loss. We also had some crucial penalties. So I'm not saying all the offensive problems are on Garrett, but the scheme certainly is not helping. When you look at Daniel Jones when he was with Pat Shurmur and when he was with Jason Garrett in the red zone, which is what matters more than anything else, that generally is where points are put on the board. You either put up 3 or you put up 7 in most cases. And when you only put up 3, it's almost like you lose 4 points. Well, Daniel Jones under Pat Shurmur in just 12 starts had 10 touchdowns and no interceptions in the red zone. In just 12 starts in his rookie season. With Jason Garrett now in 17 starts. So 5 more starts. He has 5 touchdowns. So 5 less touchdowns and 5 more starts. And 2 interceptions. 2 more interceptions than he had with Pat Shurmur from within inside the red zone. Again, in his rookie season. So some of this certainly has to fall on the play calling. And you have to ask yourself as a fan, well, there has to be some changes that are made. This is a year where we need to find out what we have in our quarterback in Daniel Jones. And while Daniel Jones is showing some promise, as a fan, I want him to be put in the best position possible to succeed. And I'm not even necessarily advocating to fire Garrett. Take away his play calling responsibility if things aren't starting to work, if you feel like you can't fire him. A lot of people point to the fact that they say maybe Joe Judge doesn't have the say to fire Jason Garrett. Garrett, obviously, a lot of people, myself included, thought was Mara influence, being that he was the only major coach that really didn't have any ties to Joe Judge. But what I'll say to that is Mark Colombo, who came along with Jason Garrett last year, who obviously was Garrett influenced, the offensive line coach, Joe Judge got out of here real quick. So I don't know if I'm buying into that theory that Joe Judge can't make changes if he feels they need to be made. And I'm going to jump into some of the quotes as to what Joe Judge had to say. And in my opinion, Joe Judge needs to step up because his job is going to depend on this. I think going into the year, we're all rooting for Joe Judge. Of course you are. If you're a Giants fan, rooting for Joe Judge to be the guy here for the next 10 years, like Tom Coughlin was. But if this team doesn't start to turn around real quick, he may be without a job. So his job may depend on the improvement of this offense throughout the year. And you could certainly make a case when I go over some of the numbers that a move from Garrett to Kitchens, even though it may not be Kitchens may not be the greatest guy in the world. He did have some success as an OC when he was calling the plays for Baker Mayfield in his rookie year before becoming the head coach, and then they failed miserably, and it did look like the offense was a little bit more aggressive with Kitchens at the offensive coordinator position. Whether or not it would be an answer, I don't know. I can't tell you that, but that's the best right now that the New York Giants probably can do. You're not going to bring in an offensive coordinator completely from the outside 3 games into the season. You're going to bring in somebody that Daniel Jones has some familiarity with, and I would think Kitchens would be the answer if you elected to do that. Or like I said, maybe you don't fire Garrett, but you take away the play calling duties. The Giants have to shake something up with this offense. Again, I don't want to make Jason Garrett the scapegoat, but there has to be some changes made. You can't keep going forward with this and not making any changes after you've had the losses they've made. That is at least my opinion. But let's jump into some of the quotes that have come out regarding this situation. This is Joe Judge talking about Jason Garrett. In terms of who's going to be calling the plays, no. I asked if there were going to be any changes. He said Monday afternoon on a conference call with reporters when asked if a change was pending. In terms of the offense, defense, kicking game, the coordinators will still be making the play calls this week. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's his decision. And he's going to live and die with it. And I'm going to, I don't have any choice but to hope he's making the right decision. But if he's making the wrong decision, and this offense continues to be as poor as they've been, the fan base is going to turn on Joe Judge real quick. Next up is this. Obviously, game plan-wise, we'll make some adjustments. He said of the play calling, we'll do some things that we think can improve more. We'll obviously dive into a couple of the focal points to make sure that we finish in the red zone. So far this year, the New York Giants are 3 of 9 from within the red zone with 0 touchdown passes. There are 3 red zone touchdowns. One was a Barkley run. The other was a Daniel Jones run, week 1. And I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But I think they've had 3 red zone touchdowns. None of them have been a pass. That's been something we have to obviously do better as a team. And, you think about all the players that we added. Kyle Rudolph, you've barely seen him utilized in the red zone. Kenny Golladay, we threw our first fade pattern to him all year from within the red zone just last week. The New York Giants have to do a much better job both executing and calling plays from within inside the 20-yard line. This then coming up here. We're going to stay consistent with what we're doing and keep improving as a team, he said. There's a lot of things there to clean up coaching-wise, but we're going to stay on track with it and make sure that we could get those things right before making any radical changes. So Judge is saying we're going to stay status quo. We're not going to make any major changes. Listen, like I said, making a change at this point may not make that big of a difference. It's not like you're going to change the whole playbook and the whole scheme, being that Daniel Jones looks like he's at least starting to get more comfortable in it. It just may mean that you try to be a little bit more aggressive or open things up or maybe try to utilize Daniel Jones's legs on a more consistent basis. But there's not going to be a radical change in terms of the scheme from within season. You'd only be scrambling your quarterback's head even further. If you're going to make a change to the scheme, that will come before next year. So even if we made a change, like I said, it doesn't guarantee that there's going to be any major changes to this offense. Maybe the play calling from within inside the 20 would be better, though. This then coming out from Zach Rosenblatt when he asked Joe Judge a question about Garrett. I asked Joe Judge why he thinks Jason Garrett is the right man for the job calling plays. His answer, we're going to stay on the track with it and make sure we get things right before we make any radical changes. So that was, I guess, the question that, I think I just read that quote, but that was the question, when he answered it. And then I wanted to pull up some other stats about Jason Garrett and how this offense has performed since he's been here. And like I said, didn't have the best of opportunities. We all agree with that. We all know that when he came in here with Dallas, he had a great offensive line. He had a great running game. The New York Giants did not. So it was probably not the best of choices to hire Garrett to begin with because he didn't really fit the personnel on this team. With this team, it probably would have been a much better choice to go with a West Coast style offense type of coordinator. A guy that gets the ball out of the quarterback's hands quick with crossing patterns, creates separation over the middle quickly. Similar to a guy like Pat Shurmur, similar to a guy like Ben McAdoo. Garrett was probably not the wisest of choices with the personnel on this football team. I do think it was Mara influenced, and I do think he was brought here largely due to the fact that you were bringing in a young head coach without any experience. But this coming out from, I think it's Marcus Mosher. Since Jason Garrett's been here, in the 19 games he's been the offensive coordinator, New York Giants are 32nd in yards to go on third down. That's insane. They are 31st in points per game. They are 31st in explosive pass plays. Last year, I think the Giants only had 5 plays of over 40 yards, and 2 of them came from Daniel Jones's legs. They are 30th in points per drive. They are 28th in yards per drive. And going even further, they are 31st in red zone touchdown percentage, and it's not getting any better this year. They're 3 of 9 so far. 31st in offensive yards per game, 29th in sacks allowed, 29th in offensive penalties, that's insane, and 29th in third down conversion rate. So there's not a whole lot good to say about this offense, and it makes you say to yourself, yeah, changes need to be made. And whether or not it's the coordinator or whether or not it's more the players, we need to get that answer. But we can't change the players, at least not right now. So if I was Joe Judge and this continues to go on the way it has, I see no reason not to try to make some changes with the play calling. I think we could all agree, especially this week, like Washington, I tried to give them a fair chance. I said, yeah, the offense looked better. They tried to throw the ball more down the field. But with Garrett, it's been a lot of the same. And now I'm not trying to make him the punching bag. I do think there's other issues. I don't think Patrick Graham's done a great job. I don't think Joe Judge did a bad job this year. There's no denying that. I thought Graham did a better job week 3, but he still was horrible the first 2 weeks. And the players still have to perform. I'm not trying to excuse them either. But to me, this is the easiest change that the New York Giants at least could try to make at this point in time to try to spark something up. Try to at least change who's calling the plays from within the same scheme. I understand you can't bring in a completely new scheme 4 weeks into the season in which Daniel Jones just learned this scheme and doesn't have a full off season to prepare and learn a new one. But a different play caller, based off the results we just saw with those numbers, certainly couldn't hurt the New York Giants or Daniel Jones. But it looks as if now, at least going into week 4, that Joe Judge is tying himself once again to Jason Garrett. Let's just hope as fans, this offense starts to put some points on the board, because if they don't get better from within inside the red zone, we're not winning very many football games this year. It's great if you could go 20-20, but we can't keep settling for field goals. Graham Gano kicked 5 field goals the week before. This past week, we couldn't punch it in. So it's got to get much better, guys, and hopefully it does. If it was me, I'd probably look to make a change this week. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.